Hello again, dear students. One of the different activities you are asked to perform during your baccalaureate papers is to ask questions. So the instruction is generally like, for example, the last year's baccalaureate exam for scientific stream was topic number 1 was ask questions which the underlined words answer. Right. So here again you are going to move back to your background grammar and check whether you are able to ask questions or not. Most of you are going to. It's very easy to ask a question in English. It is generally if the affirmative sentence is subject plus verb. If I want to go to the interrogative form or to move, to shift to the interrogative form, I have just to invert the verb and the subject and I get the interrogative form. Yes, that's right, but there are some exceptions and not all the verbs are able to form the sentence in the interrogative form. Example. He, for example, works. So here is the subject and the verb. So if I use this rule, for me it is just very easy. I am going to put the verb first and then works he and question. And that's it. But in fact, can I say works he? This is not correct. So what should I do? It is not correct. And if I refer to the rule, this is exactly what I should do, but it doesn't work. So I have to consider other examples. For example, he is working. Can I change the sentence to the interrogative form very easily? Where is the verb? It is he, subject and verb. It is the same verb to work, but the tense is different. How can I move now to the interrogative form? Should I shift the whole verb and the subject? Is working he? No, this is not correct. I have just to move the auxiliary. So my sentence would be, is he working? Is he working? Yes, that sounds correct. Is he working? So I just move the verb and subject and thus my reference rule is correct. But in fact, this is not a verb. So what you should know is that the interrogative form is different if the verb is an auxiliary verb or a normal verb. So we are going to divide this table into auxiliary verbs and what we call normal verbs. So auxiliary verbs are verbs that have two functions. They function as most of the time as auxiliaries, but we can use them as well as verbs. Normal verbs. What are auxiliary verbs you know? I know auxiliary verb to be. I know auxiliary verb have. I know auxiliary verb or all the different auxiliary models you know, can, could, may, might, shall, should, etc. All that auxiliary verbs or auxiliary models. Most auxiliary or the most common auxiliary verbs used are auxiliary to be and auxiliary to have. Can, must, should, etc. Will, for example, etc. Normal verbs are all the verbs, the other verbs, except these auxiliary verbs that we know: to, go, to, move, to, work, for example. Of course, the verbs here are in their infinitive form. We are going, of course, to conjugate my verbs to different tenses, and thus, if I conjugate to, for example, present simple, as the example we have here, he works, and to the continuous tense, any continuous tense, the present continuous or past continuous, for example, he is working. He is working. Then I can say whether this normal verb is normal only in these two cases: he worked or he worked, if it is the past simple, present simple, past simple. All the other tenses are compound tenses. All the other tenses contain, or the verb, if it is conjugated to different other tenses such as continuous tenses, perfect tenses, we have to move back to your conjugation and to revise all tenses. Nevertheless, we have be plus verb plus ing. All this is what we call continuous. Here we have what we call an auxiliary verb. So asking questions is different whether the verb is an auxiliary verb or a normal verb. Is the verb is normal? We have two cases. If the tense is simple, we don't use an auxiliary. If the tense is compound, for example, continuous, or perfect, for example, he has finished. This is also another verb constituted of two parts, an auxiliary and a participle. Here we have the auxiliary to be and the present participle. This is what we call continuous. When to be is in the present, we call it the present continuous. If it is in the past, we call it the past continuous, and the different use of different tenses is up to you to check for. The present, here we have auxiliary to have and verb plus ed, which is called the past participle. So this is what we call perfect. Perfect tenses. Here also we have two tenses. When the auxiliary to have is in the present, it is the present perfect. If it is in the past, it is the past perfect. So let's resume all this. We said here, when I wanted to go from the affirmative to the interrogative, I couldn't. And here, when I wanted to go from the affirmative to the interrogative, I found this very easy. I just moved, or I just inverted the subject and the verb, and my sentence, or my interrogative sentence became correct. So, if I consider, can say, or I can ask myself, what is different from this sentence and this one? The only thing that here we have a normal verb, and here we have an auxiliary verb. So what should I do to move or to change my sentence here, or to ask the question here? I can ask why? Because I don't have an auxiliary verb. So logically, I am going to tell myself, if I want to change this sentence from the negative, from the affirmative to the interrogative, I need an auxiliary verb. What are the auxiliary verbs we have? I am going to go to auxiliary to be. I need to be Mr. B. Mr. B, I need you here to ask a question. Mr. B is going to tell me I'm very busy, I cannot help you. Excuse me, I am very busy with the continuous, with the present continuous, with the past continuous, with the passive voice, etc. So I have no time, I am very busy. So I am going to ask Mr. Have. Hey Mr. Have, I need you. I need your help. I want to change this sentence from the affirmative to the interrogative, and I need an auxiliary verb, and to be is not ready to help me. Can you? The have also is going to tell me, I know I cannot help you, I'm very sorry. I am also very busy with the perfect tenses. I am used with the present perfect, I am used with the past perfect, so I cannot help you, excuse me, I'm very sorry. So the other auxiliary models are used for different other functions. Can, for example, be used to express ability, possibility, probability, etc. Will is used to express future actions, and many other auxiliary models that have different functions, so each one has got a function, except another auxiliary verb, which is verb to do, auxiliary to do. So I go to ask auxiliary to do. So to do, can you help me to ask questions? Yes, I am not very busy. I am just I have just one condition. So what is the condition? That if I get into the sentence, it is me who is going to be conjugated, not the verb. That is why generally when we change from the affirmative to the interrogative sentences containing normal verbs in the present simple or in the past simple, because they do not have an auxiliary, they move to the infinitive without to. Infinitive without to. Here is an example. Same example. He works. Works is in the present simple. I need auxiliary to do, to move or to get an auxiliary, and then to invert invert the subject and the verb, and then get my reference room. To do says I want to take the tense, so I am going to put to do in the present simple, and then it becomes he. To do, present simple, enters the sentence, is introduced to the sentence, and also he said my condition is to take the tense. It is me that I want to have the tense. It is me that I want to be conjugated. He does, and the verb becomes infinitive, you said, without to. Now, I have an auxiliary. and I can shift or change or invert the subject and the verb. So my sentence is going to be, does he work? And this is why, and question mark. And this is why we generally use or need to use an auxiliary when we want to change to the interrogative form, when the verbs or normal verbs are in tenses that do not contain auxiliaries. But what are tenses that don't contain auxiliaries? In fact, we have only two. Present simple or past simple. Present simple or past simple. That's why we call them simple. Fact. Unlike the other tenses, simple tenses do not contain or are not a combination of two parts or two elements, such as the auxiliary and the participle. Auxiliary and participle. Auxiliary and participle. Simple tenses are not complex, differently complex, simple. The simple tenses do not contain auxiliary, so that's why we need an auxiliary to move to the interrogative form. Here also, if we need auxiliary to do, it is going to change or to take the tense. Here we have the past simple. To do is going to change to the past simple, becomes did, and my sentence is going to be did he. I think it is clear. If you have any questions, you can ask. Interrogative sentences. So you have to form interrogative sentences. What else? I need to clean the board. The auxiliary verbs to be and to have, can, etc. If they are in any sentence, it is very easy for me to move or to change my sentence from affirmative to interrogative. If my sentence contains normal verbs, means without auxiliary verbs or auxiliary verbs themselves, it is very difficult for me to change from the affirmative to the interrogative unless I call an auxiliary, which is auxiliary to do, to help me, and then I can change my sentence very easily from the affirmative to the interrogative. I need to clear the board now. We have some other exceptions you have to take into account. So you have just to pay attention that it is different to ask questions according to the verb used, whether the verb is auxiliary or normal verb. So, if the sentence contains a verb but that plays the same role as a verb and as an auxiliary verb, for example, he. For example, he is a doctor, for example. That here the verb is an auxiliary verb. This is auxiliary to be. I can change to the interrogative is he. So auxiliary verbs can be found alone or could be found in combination with participles to form either continuous tenses or perfect tenses, present continuous and past continuous. Okay. So when the verb used is an auxiliary verb, there is no problem. We change the verb and the subject. In fact, it is always auxiliary verb. So when auxiliary verb is, interrogative form is also very easy. Now, what we should know as well is that we have two types of questions, as you know, WH questions and yes-no questions. Of course, yes-no questions are questions that need short answers such as yes or no. For example, here, he is a doctor. Is he a doctor? Yes or no. The WH questions, here we have two possibilities. WH questions, or WH questions, we have two possibilities. Of course, the system is going to be the same, or the rule is going to be the same, whether the interrogative sentence is yes, no, or WH. Whether we use interrogative pronouns or not, we have always to have this form. Auxiliary verb, subject. Auxiliary verb, subject. We have inversion, means verb plus subject. But we invert inversion. We invert when we invert WH or interrogative pronoun functions as an object. Interrogative pronoun, object. Now, if the interrogative pronoun is an object, we don't invert. Means we don't need verb subject. We need just to keep it as it is, subject plus verb, and we get the interrogative form. For example, I'm talking to James, for example. I'm talking to James. James here in this sentence is functioning as, this noun is functioning as an object. And I want to ask a question about James. So, from the moment it is an object, I am going to use, of course, my question word or the interrogative pronoun. For example, here, from the moment it is a person, I am going to use who. Who here is functioning as an object. Who you are talking to. Who you are talking to. Who you are talking. Here we have subject and verb, so I need to invert. So there is inversion. Who are you? And we have inversion to my interrogative form. Verb plus subject. I think it is clear. Then, there is no inversion. When the interrogative, there is no inversion. If the interrogative pronoun is subject. So when the interrogative pronoun is itself functioning as a subject, we do not invert. We do not invert. Means my sentence is not going to be like here, subject, verb to verb subject. My sentence here is going to be subject, verb to subject, verb as an interrogative form. Keeps the same. For example, James told me. If the question is about James, which is subject, I am going to not invert. If the question is about me, here for example, the question is about an object, the question pronoun or the interrogative pronoun is going to be or to function as an object, and thus I am going to invert. Here I am going to ask about the subject, so I am not going to invert. James is going to be who and told you, for example, and you can consider that we have subject, verb, and then object. I think it is clear. There any questions? Are there any questions? So now, let's move to sum up. When we want to ask a question, we have to pay attention to the tense used. If the tense is simple, means that the verb in its form does not contain any auxiliary, and thus I need to provide an auxiliary to go to the interrogative. If my verb is a normal verb but is in a form that contains an auxiliary, therefore I don't need any other auxiliary from the moment I have already an auxiliary, such as in continuous tenses or perfect tenses, or with all the other auxiliaries used in different tense forms. If the verb itself is an auxiliary verb, like here for example, it is, we have, if I ask for example here, where is the verb? It is the verb to be here. Itself is an auxiliary verb. So I am not going to provide an auxiliary from the moment the verb itself is an auxiliary verb, and thus I can invert the subject and the verb, and thus obtain or get my interrogative form. That's it in general, but you have sometimes to pay attention to the verbs, such as here, for example, when the sentence contains a preposition, like here, for example, to or for. Generally, when we ask the question, we put it at the end. Who are you talking to? I am talking to James. Who are you talking to? So we can consider that generally when my sentence contains a preposition, we use it or we put it in the interrogative form at the end. We tried now to do an activity taken from back exam, or like last year's back exam. This is last year's back exam, and in this paper, in the second part, B, exploration, text exploration, second exercise, we have this instruction. Of course, you always need to read carefully the instructions to do exactly what you are asked to do. Here, if you have, for example, we have ask questions, which the, and you can get this paper from the internet or from some collections of back exam papers. Ask questions which the underline words answer. Our first sentence is people. This is dealing with the topic of Unit 3, Scientific Stream, dealing with safety first, or energy balance, etc. People become obese because of overeating. Because of overeating. And the underlined word is because of overeating. First, I have as a pupil to answer this task, or to do this task, to read the sentence first, and then I am asked to get the interrogative form. So I am going to identify the subject, identify the verb, because in my mind it is always inversion: verb, subject, subject, verb to verb, subject, to get the interrogative form. And then the underlined words are the words that are going to answer my question. Or of course, I am not going to use them in my question from the moment they are the elements of, or the answering elements. Then, how can I obtain my reference rule? The verb here, is it an auxiliary verb or a normal verb? It is, of course, a normal verb. Then, is it simple or combined? I mean, the question is, to get my interrogative form, I need an auxiliary verb. Here, I don't have an auxiliary verb. So, do I need an auxiliary? Yes. Which one? It is, of course, auxiliary to do. From the said that auxiliaries, all auxiliaries are not very free to help me. They are very busy with the other functions. So, which tense is used? It is the present simple, and I need the present. I need an auxiliary, the auxiliary to get my interrogative form. Because it's going to help me choose the type of interrogative sentences I need, whether it is a yes/no question or a WH question. From the moment because introduces the cause, so my question is about the cause, so I need a WH question word. So what is the WH question word that introduces the cause or asks about the cause? What interrogative pronoun asks about the cause? It is the question word or interrogative pronoun why, and then my sentence should be verb plus subject. Why? Become people? No, I need an auxiliary. Why do people, look, verb subject. Why do people become obese? Why do people become obese? Obese means very, very fat. Overweight. And don't forget my question. Well, so why? Because of overeating. Means when people abuse with food, abuse with eating a lot of food. We go to the second sentence, B. A low intake of vitamins. A low intake of vitamins can cause malnutrition. Mal is a prefix that means bad. Bad nutrition. Malnutrition. Okay? And the underlined word is malnutrition. Here as well, I am going to ask myself the same questions. This sentence, does this sentence contain a normal verb or an auxiliary verb? We go to the verb can cause. And here we have can, which is an auxiliary model, which is, as we said, an auxiliary verb. So do I need another auxiliary to ask my question? No, I don't. I don't need it. From the moment I have already one. So what I need is just to pay attention that the word I am going to ask about should not come back in my question. It is the answering element. So I don't have to use it in my question. So how can I ask my question? A low intake of vitamins is the subject. Can cause something. Can cause something. So I am going to ask about something, and thus I need WH question. But which WH pronoun I'm going to use? From the moment I'm asking about something, it is, what is this? What? What? Okay? What? A low intake, vitamins is the subject, and can is the auxiliary verb. Of course, we said, you can consider that all the inversions are between the subject and the auxiliary verb. If there is no auxiliary verb, I provide an auxiliary verb and then I invert. What can, it is always my reference verb plus subject. My reference rule is here. What can the whole subject? What can a low intake of vitamins, and then the verb. What can a low intake vitamins cause? A low intake of vitamins can cause malnutrition. That's it. And of course, I hope you have benefited from this lesson. Thank you very much. See you next video.